And 1. Oh, nope. 2, 3. You don't get second slot. Second slot's reserved for Spider. You don't get second slot. What you think, boy? You ain't get no second slot, and that's our bottom line. Because the Uncanny Man said so.
I thought I was the bottom line because I'm on the bottom of the screen.
You don't want to know the comment I was going to go with after that. I was going to ask if you had been to any Diddy parties.
Nah.
I'll
I'll pass. No thanks.
It's a lot of bottles.
It's a lot of.
Yep.
That's a lot of oil, and I'm not talking about the stuff that we invade other countries for. Anyways, that's not the point of the conversation. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastic episode of this Uncanny Earth, episode 303, and we're talking about cursed objects. I love cursed objects. They are somewhat of a fascinating thing for me, only because you have to wonder how much they're actually cursed, or is it all just I don't want to say self-fulfilling prophecy, because that could be what it is. But what do you gentlemen think? Are you purveyors of the theory that can happen? My affiliate anniversary was like 2 days ago, Deadpool, but I appreciate the love regardless. Thank you,
told
sir.
me to send the notification.
You're good. It's all love. I appreciate it. You know I appreciate you. What do you gentlemen think? Are you believers in the cursed object ideology? Me personally, I don't know. What do you think? We'll start with Spider, because we ain't heard from him in a while. We don't know if he's dead. He's just been playing a lot of Final Fantasy. You know, that's what he do with his life these days. Over leveling and still getting whooped on.
Yeah, it didn't help that time.
didn't get you out of that jam, did it?
That
They're
was
pick
straight,
bad.
Like walked into that and got torn to pieces.
you got hit up pretty bad. But no, Spider, what are your thoughts on cursed objects? You're a little more in that realm than I am, per se. I don't want to put it like that, like, oh, you're so much better than me in the cursed objects realm. But like in terms of like,
you think you know more than me?
Think you know more than Stone Cold about cursed objects? You're more of a person that I believe probably has cursed a couple objects in his lifetime here on this planet.
Maybe not intentionally, but maybe just by being in some grouchy mood, because energy and all that.
Yeah. What are your prevailing thoughts on cursed objects? Do you think they are in fact cursed, or do you think it's more of like a if I tell you, hey, Spider, I'm going to give you this cursed bottle cap. Here it is, and I throw it at you, and you catch it. Have you made it up in your mind already that what I'm giving you is cursed? If I just would have set that bottle cap down, and you didn't know I didn't say anything, would you still, in fact, believe it was cursed?
I think that there's an element of truth to both, honestly, because we know how powerful the imagination and the mind can be. And we know how easy it is to plant an idea in somebody's head, and then that idea gets stuck there and either gives them positive thoughts or negative thoughts, or drives people nuts. Like sometimes you give people positive thoughts, and then they agonize over there, like, why should this make me feel good? Like there must be something I distrust about it, and it does the opposite effect. So I think sometimes there's a lot of it that's that. And then on the other hand, we've talked many times on the show about energy collection and energy transference and things of that nature. And we know scientifically that many things, like your brain waves and a lot of things, can hold energy, and your emotions can cause energetic reactions in your body. And it wouldn't be too far out of imagination, honestly, that a strong enough emotional tether could kind of go from a person into an object. Is that commonplace? I don't know. We don't have the evidence to say for sure. Knowing that everything is energy and there's energy all around us and whatever doesn't mean that it works the way that we think it might, or that it'll do the things that we think it might do. So I'm a little on the fence about both. I've done some various things on my own as far as like energy working and stuff like that, because I've been into the ritual space more than once. And I can't say that I've done anything really fantastic, but I've done things that I think have been beneficial to me in the past. and I probably will do so again until I'm shown consistently that, oh yeah, none of this is working, so why bother? So I lean towards that, but at the other hand, like I said, the mind is a very powerful weapon against its own person, and it's doesn't take a lot necessarily to get those thoughts rolling that maybe, oh, I've been cursed, when it's all manufactured.
Have you ever come into contact with something that somebody said, "Oh, it's cursed," on a level of that, held it, touched it, looked at it? Have you ever come into contact with something of that caliber and then thought to yourself, "Okay, it's time for rationalization. Is this going to curse me? Is this not going to curse me? And has anything happened to you after the fact?"
Believe it or not, yeah, and I think I've talked about it on the show before, a long time ago. Um, I think I talked about. Do you remember me talking about the mirror on my porch, which is
It,
still
do-
there,
it
by the
does.
way?
It does ring a bell. Hasn't that been there since you've owned the house?
No, because we didn't. It didn't come with the house. We picked it up from somebody else that we knew, who said that it made them uncomfortable and a lot of different things. And we brought it here so specifically we could, do the salt, do whatever different things that I thought were appropriate. Now, at the time and now, I can't say that I bought into the whole thing. I just kind of was like, you know what, we're helping out a friend, might as well side on the side of caution. And it's on the porch face down. It's not face up where the mirror part is up. And honestly, I don't think I've ever had a problem related to it since then, which could be just my confidence that it wasn't going to affect it to begin with, or it could be that it was never cursed to begin with. It's hard to say. There's no way to prove either way. But it is still there, and I haven't done anything with it. We had this thought that if we just took it and smashed it up, then maybe something else would happen or whatnot. If it did have some residual energies in it, that it might spread and cause not necessarily harm to us, but get out into the neighborhood. And that's a little dramatic, but it kind of just errs on the side of caution. And so it's sat there face down after we did what we did with it, and I don't believe that it has ever affected us in any meaningful way.
Well, too, what I've noticed in researching demonic rituals and how to conduct a demonic ritual, how to summon demons, how to summon otherworldly spirits, mirrors are a prime factor in dealing or summoning a demon or making a bargain with a demon. There's always a mirror involved. I shouldn't say always, but a good portion of the time, mirrors are involved.
There's you remember me talking, not again on the show, probably several episodes ago, about how my bathroom has two mirrors and they
Like,
face each other.
oh no, I did. Well, I think you've
And
told me this, but it's been a while
and one
since we
of
talked
them,
about it.
like, I brought up that when we look in the one mirror, it distorts certain parts of the body, right?
Yes.
We've covered that mirror. We've put like this film stuff that makes it look like it's stained glass or something like that, so it doesn't actually reflect back and forth. Now, I don't know honestly if it's made any sort of difference because I didn't think much of it before. Other people in the house say that they feel better about it. So, I mean, I guess that works. Me personally, the only difference is that I don't see the distorting effects because I'm not looking in the mirror anymore. So I just have the one main mirror and everything looks normal. So again, getting back to mirrors and very similar things. So it's a very coincidental, but also kind of rational thought process.
What do you think the reason was they put two mirrors facing each other is? Because I've read that you're not supposed to do that, just based off spirit practices and demonic possessions and entities from the other world that can sort of leak through into our own reality.
I think probably in this case it was an oversight because the one mirror was on the door of a medicine cabinet.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think they just bought the cabinet and were just like, oh, it's got a mirror in it. So that's nice and convenient. You got a mirror here and you got a mirror there. I don't think
Okay.
they thought too deeply about it.
Right.
Um, and I don't think it was any sort of like, I don't think it came into the house having had a particular malevolent energy or anything attached to it. I just think it's one of those things that when you have two surfaces bouncing off each other for so long, that you might get some buildup and some charge and some weird things going on, and maybe it just warped the appearance of when you looked into it. I don't have like a really good explanation for it, but like I said, I think it was just one of those random chance things that happened, and then it ended up becoming a weird thing that we noticed later. And now that it's been dealt with, I guess you can say that it seems to be improved in the situation in there. So,
Or they say if you stare at your face long enough in a mirror, you
mm.
start to see distortions and things like that. So,
This was
very
a weird thing where, like, you would, since it's behind you, you could see the image of you in the mirror, then
right,
your back, then the image of you, then your back, then the image of you, like back in a line all through the mirrors.
right,
And I always used to stand there sometimes and look in there and think, is any of those images of me doing anything different?
right. I know
Anybody,
that.
is there something in there? But nothing ever, like, I didn't stand there for like an hour at a time just staring at it to see. So I can't, but there was nothing over out of the ordinary from there. So
I could easily see you like standing there with like a glass of whiskey and being like this, and then looking at me like
you're not drinking it, you
quit it,
imposter.
quit it.
Drink it now.
And then the beard's like, you got me. All right, Steven, I direct the same question that I directed to Spider at you. My friend, what do you think and what are your thoughts on cursed objects? Do you believe that objects can be cursed? Or are you of the mind that once a person knows an object's cursed, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy? They're going to have those things happen because in their head, it's already said to happen.
I think it's kind of like Spider said, but I would also say basically, what's the difference between a curse and a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because really, if you think about it, a curse is a self-fulfilling prophecy in my mind, because you are constantly thinking about you want XYZ to happen to whatever or whoever. So you're putting that energy into the object. And then, like Spider said, we have scientific evidence of energy transference. So you're putting that energy into the object, and then the object is transferring that energy back to the other person. So I think it's all like interconnected.
That's a good point. Now, I asked the same question to you that I asked a Spider. Have you ever had in your possession an object that somebody said was cursed, or have you ever come in contact with a cursed object?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. Now, on my account, I'm still in the middle here. And I say this only because I've never dealt with a cursed object directly, so I can't really say, but I also have to look at it in a sense of, well, if the object in and of itself is cursed, I know it's cursed. So I'm going into it with the mentality that the object is cursed. So if I bring it upon my persons, I'm like, well, I know it's cursed. So if bad things happen, I can blame it on this and not the mathematical equations of like, you're not always going to have good days. Bad things are going to happen. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Um, and I think that sometimes it just falls in line with what you would call, like you said, a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when does a self-fulfilling prophecy and a curse deviate? When do the two split?
I think it's when you're aware of it.
But aware of it in terms of how? Aware of it like, okay,
Like,
this has
yeah, like you were saying earlier, like if someone tells you or you're aware of it, or actually, like you've mentioned on previous episodes, what if someone went to a place that was cursed, supposedly, but they'd never heard the story or the legend? Like
right,
you always talk about, what is it, asylum
right,
that you go to all the time? Or you
right.
don't go there all the time, but you
All the time, man.
yeah.
I'm there every weekend to
But
be
you've
in my
spoken
peeps.
he's
of it
got
a
appointments
lot.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I
you've
got
Got to
spoken
go
of
there
it
for
many
his
times.
treatments.
but
And
here, but
I'm
here's
also curious about that, like, if
here's
someone went somewhere like that. Go ahead.
sorry, I
Go
don't mean
ahead.
to interrupt you. My
Oh, no, I
apologies.
was just reiterating.
Here's my thing with that though. You see a big gigantic building, right? You might not know about its legend or its lore, but you
Yeah,
already know something is there. Let's
yeah,
transfer that same ideology or concept to a home. You're not going to think, oh, that home's cursed and bad things happen there, because bad things do happen in homes all the time. You take Amityville, for instance, the Amityville house.
yeah.
Supposedly it was demonically possessed, or the house that He lives at the asylum and he keeps escaping. That's true. And Apple has to always bring me back. So she's always tasked to bring me back. But the best thing is I keep moving, I keep jucking, I keep driving, and I'm like, whoo, can't find me. I'm very elusive, um, as it were. But if you take that same person, right, and what I've noticed too about cursed homes, for instance, I don't ever see a cursed home that is past a certain date. Okay. The house that was built in like 2005, I never hear about curses being there. I don't ever hear about ghosts
Yeah.
being there. But you get your 1800s homes, you get your 1700s homes that were redone and remodeled. There's always things that
Something.
happen in those houses. But if you go into a house that was built in 2005, nobody's like, yeah, man, I just saw these spectral entities roaming around the house. So my next question, I guess, to the panel here is, does it take time for that energy to build up? Are we going to see, well, we won't be around, but let's say in 2124, right? That's 100 years from now. Are we going to look back in 2124 and be like, that person was murdered brutally in a 2005 house? Since then, families that lived in it, they've heard of things happening, cabinets closing, people walking around at night, muddy footprints, things of that variety and of that nature, right? Are we going to see that take place? Because if that's the case, and that means that it takes a time for the energy itself to build up. Energy just doesn't, in that case, it wouldn't just be like, well, energy is there. But what I've noticed is in your 1800s or in your 1700s homes, the energy, while it's been there for a while, it seems after that specific incident, the house is already going crazy. Now, I have to wonder if things like the silver in the mirrors and other such materials that the houses were built with, were those conductive of spiritual energy? And are the houses today, your PVC piping and your more plastic sourced materials, are they just not conductors of that type of energy? And I'll pose this question to you first, Stephen.
Okay, so for me, I think it's kind of like when you talk about the ghost echoes and all that. I think it does take a bit of time for the energy to build up typically, but I also think that I don't know how to word this exactly, but the severity of the end of life for different situations might have an effect on that. Like if someone has a peaceful end of life, then it would be more, it would take longer for the energy to build up. But like you said, with something like the Amityville Horror or something more violent or aggressive, I think
Correct.
the energy is stronger and it might build up a little bit faster.
Okay. So
And
you
like you said, like you suggested, the homes might have been built with different materials. I don't really know much about, building homes with different materials, but I have been told that, things like iron, steel, and salt are, like can help with spirits, like keep them out of your house.
Well, Spider and I went to the Hammond house, which is a very old house in Sutton, West Virginia. Me and him walked through it.
Mhm.
Um, a very different feeling from, say, like a modern home. And the mirrors were built different. The house is built different,
Mhm.
very much in that old style, and it's haunted. We didn't see anything. I didn't really feel anything, but I think it was broad day. There was visitors.
Yeah.
Les Odell wasn't there sleeping. I think if he'd have been there sleeping, we'd heard
Yeah.
something. But I feel like in those places, in those times, um, maybe life was a little bit harder. Maybe because life's a little bit easier for us today. Because, let's be honest here, life really is easier for us today. We don't have nearly as many cases of certain diseases and outbreaks of certain diseases. We're a more cleanly society. Not everybody, but most of us, I would say. We have a better regimen of food that we can eat. We live longer. So, in that regard, I wonder if, because like you said, I think if there's a lot of suffering at a location, you can pick up on that. But as far as items are concerned, and you're going into it thinking to yourself, okay, I just got this ring off of eBay. I didn't know it was cursed. Do you think that newer things can be cursed, or do you think they have to be older things? Now, I have read about the Anguished Man, which I believe is an earlier, but still like a more modern painting, and
Okay.
it's said to be cursed, but it also looks terrifying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're looking at it like, man, this thing, you're in your head because of our society and the horror movies that we have and the
And the
things that we've
wordplay
seen.
too.
Yes, the Anguished Man. In your head, you're like, oh yeah, this painting's a, it's a mess from top to bottom. But let's say like there is a picture of a nice painting, daisies in a field, nothing wild, and you get into your home, and it is, the author or the artist was a horrible human being. He made messes. He killed people. Do you think that person, not knowing, would start to feel those differences?
I think the person not knowing anything about the previous owner would not feel the differences at first. And it also, like I said before, I think it would also depend on the actions taken with that certain object. Like typically over time, I feel like the stuff energies would get into the object regardless over time. But if someone is actively willing the energies into an object, like actively trying to curse an object intentionally, then I feel like it would build up much faster and be much more powerful. So I think it would depend on the individual situation. But if they were not actively trying to curse the object intentionally, then I think it would probably take a lot more time, and the person who didn't know the history would be much less likely to feel those kinds of energies.
Spider, your thoughts?
I have a similar view. It's all about accrual. It's all about how things accrue over time, depending on what the events were and what the circumstances were. Because if you have a home where someone lived their whole life and then they pass away, maybe in the home or not even necessarily in the home, but they've passed on, the next people who might come in, if they buy the house or whatever, if they know that a person passed away there and they think, oh, well, that's sad, but here we are living in the home, nothing may happen because they're not putting any stock into the person passing in the home. It's more of a normal, oh yeah, people, that happens to people. It's not like them being just
It's true.
flippant or them being unsympathetic. It's that, that does happen. We live here now. We're going to do what we can do with it. Whereas somebody else coming in might go, oh, well, that's weird. That makes me feel kind of strange. That's kind of creepy. And then the thoughts in there that it's a weird thing that happens. They lived there a few years and they decide, you know what? I don't like living here anymore. I think it's weird. Let's move on. They get the next person, but they tell the next person, yeah, so and so passed away in the house and we felt weird the whole time we were here. The next person now has two things. They've got the fact that somebody passed in the house, and they've got the fact that somebody else after them felt weird there. So it's increasing the sense that there's something there, which could in turn produce something there over a protracted period of time. You go through several owners, you go to think, and then eventually it's a haunted location. Whereas on the other hand, if it's not just some peaceful event, if it's like the dude up in Cleveland that was kidnapping people and keeping them in his basement, they tore that house down. But if they hadn't, somebody moves in there after he's all out of it, you'll know that, hey, this was the kidnapper house. All these horrible things happened here. I'm trying to live here, so it's a nice place now, so it's nobody has to go through that again. But you're still going to always have that mindset that something really terrible happened here, and that tends to kind of soak in a little bit. It's why people, like when you go to Trans Allegheny or when you go to Moundsville or when you go to Birkenau or these various places where terrible things happened, the magnitude of things kind of stick around a little bit. Now, if you didn't know the things happened there, I think some places you would still know that something was off. Like if you go to take a tour of a prison and you didn't know that it was a very violent prison and whatever, you still know that this was a prison.
Yes.
and then that's going to seep in, and then everything else is slowly going to build up over time. If you go to a place like the places of the occurrence of the Holocaust, you go over to there, and if nobody says, if you just wander up into an empty field, I think there's still going to be a feeling there that you're going to catch on to, because it's not a natural place. It's a place where something happened. Whether you know ahead of time that something happened, it kind of soaks in. It's like the burial mounds and things we get here, the Native American things. People oftentimes will go and they'll not even know that there's mounds in the area, because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes they're just covered up, or they're trees planted all over, and we don't actually know where they're all at. You go to a national park and you start feeling weird because there's just something, some energy that's soaked in there from things that have happened in the past. And that can go for objects as well. Like somebody owns something, and I know you're going to talk about it, so I don't want to talk about it too
Yeah.
in depth. I'm just going to mention on the surface something like
Please.
Robert the Doll,
Right.
where you look at the history and there's various circumstances that may have shaped how Robert the Doll is able to, if he's able to, do the
Right.
things that he can do. It's multiple people over a long period of time ended up believing that there's something that happened, and then it started turning into a legend, and then it started turning into something you can't turn off. You can't go
Right.
in there, look at it ahead of time with no knowledge at this point.
So
Not
let's
unless you
go.
snuck in.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's
Let's go into the first thing here, because like we're getting into Robert the Doll, but what I want to talk about, because I really want to get into this, I think this is an important thing to understand when we're dealing with cursed objects, especially objects from different lands. So what I want to talk about first is the Black Orlov diamond, which is named after Russian-heired Princess Nadia Vigian Orlov, who was in possession of the diamond in 19 or who was in possession of the diamond. Sorry. But in 1947, she leaps to her death. All right, this is going to be a consistent theme with this diamond for a minute. The gem was originally brought to the U.S. by a European dealer named J.W. Paris to sell. He was like, I'm bringing it over to sell. But he would later jump to his own death from a skyscraper in the heart of Fifth Avenue. The diamond itself was said to have been stolen from a statue of the Hindu god Brahma in Pondicherry until it was, stolen by a Jesuit cleric. Now, we're going to get to the Jesuits in a future episode of this Uncanny Earth, because I feel like we haven't discussed enough of them, and I feel like we need to get more into who they are and the Black Pope and things like that. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to be bringing an episode of that. What I want to talk about here is, and the diamond itself goes on in like the 1950s. They try to cut the curse by cutting the diamond up, by splitting it into multiple parts. And that seems to have broken the curse, because there's a lot of people that have ended up wearing it. Hollywood folks and things like that at galas and balls and things, and they have not jumped off of buildings. What I want to talk about is India in and of itself. Now, this is a very mysterious land that a lot of us, if we went to India tonight, if me, Spider, and Steven got on the plane tonight and went to India, when we landed, whether it be in Mumbai or Rajasthan or any other place in India, we're going to be in for a culture shock. We're not used to that level of difference in our society. We're used to a certain society. Like, we could go to Europe and we would probably transition well, because a lot of our ancestors are from Europe. So a lot of our ideas that were brought to America were from Europe. So we would probably transition relatively well into Europe. Maybe the power outlets would throw us off a bit, because those are kind of strange. But India would be a whole nother culture shock. And I'm not saying that based on the fact of skin tone or skin color. None of that. That's not what I mean. But the whole paradigm of the society is completely different from our society or a European society. Our religions are completely different. It's an older country, a very old country. So my thought on this, because this is something that I find to be very fascinating, this is from an entirely different country. Now, if any of you have ever read the Mahabharata or any of those, hey James, welcome, or any of those Vedic epics are different, right? But India as a whole is different. You know, it's one of the sort of the I don't want to say strange. I want to say it's hard to put into words right now. I have the words, but it's not there. What's up, Zeus? Welcome and thank you for the raid, buddy. We appreciate you. Um, Steven, if you give him a shout out, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Well, if you're on Twitch, if not, I can do it. It's not a big deal. But do you think, because it is in India, and India is a land of difference between India and the United States, and the fact that it was situated in a statue of Brahma, one of the top tier gods of Hindu mythology or the Hindu religion, because I don't say mythology, that sounds a little bit, do you think that India in and of itself, being whatever history you know of India, I know a little bit, I'm sure the two of you know a little bit, um, do you think in and of itself, because it is a religious object, and we've discussed religious object, like it wasn't the chalice, but it was like a glass thing with the blood of Saint Janus. I think we talked about that
Yeah.
on like one of our very, very like the first or
How
the
they bring it out
third
and
or
look
fourth.
at it every once in a
Yeah,
while.
yeah. And if it coagulates, one thing, but if it turns into like a blood, like a more of a
fluidic.
liquid,
Into the world or something.
more fluidic adventure. Do you think that because it's India, that this item has a certain specific energy to it because it's ancient? This is we forget as Americans that there's countries that are way older than ours. And India is one of the oldest civilizations on the planet that still exists to this day. So what are your thoughts on things like, because I've been reading a lot about India and the jewels that they have stolen. Basically, they got stolen. Let's not, and what it reminds me of, it reminds me a lot of Egypt, when a lot of the artifacts were stolen from Egypt and brought over here. There's curses attached to those items as well. What do you gentlemen think that something from India would have a different set of curse or a different set of, you're dealing with a god object, right? It's in the statue of Brahma. So it's boom, boom. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts?
Well, less so because it's anything to do with India or a particular culture, and more so just because they basically stole something from a god. I think that is more likely to be cursed because you're stealing from some sort of ethereal being like that. Like an all-powerful being.
Okay. Or let me add this real quick for Spider responds. Or do you think it's the energy from the worshipers and the followers that have probably prayed to the statue and put all of their focus and intent into that statue, into those
that.
jewels, into those eyes? Because there's two of them. It was just taken, I believe, out of the right eye, and they don't have any concrete proof that it was actually, that's hard to do. Because if we go into the power of prayer, there is said to be power in that. So do you think it's a god, or do you think, I personally believe it's more of the people have put all this energy because of their prayers, because of their servitude, because of their unwilling focus on said deity, that energy has transferred into a jewel, not so much into the statue, into the stone, but into the jewel, because we got to remember, jewels are precious for a reason, and they have many different properties. And this is a diamond. Many different properties besides just looking pretty. They use diamonds to cut other diamonds. They use diamonds to cut things. That's just one of the property of a diamond. I'm sure there's plenty more. But these are valuable objects. What are your thoughts? Spider, I'll shoot to you next.
I think a lot of it has to do with the culture where these things happen, because there's a bit of comparison that you look at between what we have here in these supposed Western countries versus the Near East and the Far East. And part of the difference is that the way that religion and spirituality shaped our two societies. On the Western end, we had the church, which stamped out a lot of the older beliefs as often as they could. They made everything very, very strict. They didn't have curses and things like that. They said, hey, this is, There's this one power and that's it, and you have to fight against the evil and that's it, and it's just black and white, yes or no. At least that was the attempt. I mean, over time things have changed since then. But whereas in India and Egypt and China, Japan, a lot of those places, they didn't have a strictness about that kind of thing. And so a lot of the more mystical ideas have stuck around. In India, there are still places outside of a lot of the main cities where people 100% believe in curses. People get lynched, people get beaten because they say, "Oh yeah, this person was a witch doctor and they cursed my sister or something like that, and now my whole family is losing money." And it's interesting that you get that, whereas here you don't have that, especially here in the United
Right.
States. The United States, you don't have anything like that. You have items like you have Robert the
Right.
Doll, you've got the places, but you don't have the same level of that kind of cultural attachment to the idea as you do over there. So things like that flourished a lot longer, even to this day in places. You still have ancestor worship in Japan, and while
Correct.
not everybody, I'm sure, is 100%, they're probably like, "Oh yeah, the ancestors, who cares?" But there are a lot of people that still take it very seriously. They've got the Shinto shrines, and you have all
Yeah.
those things, and so uh, it's a very marked difference in how those kind of things preserved the heritage. And there's little pockets of it here in the United States, like in New Orleans.
Voodoo. Yeah, that's a
You
good
have
point.
in the
That's a good point.
Appalachians, some places you have the people doing the snakes.
Yes.
You've got places where old thoughts have crept into the modern idea, but it's not a widespread thing here. You get cults and things like that, but it's not the same. So you look at where those come from, and that's why it almost seems like you're a lot more likely to find items that supposedly hold curses or hold curses more powerfully or longer that have come from other societies because they have believed in them longer, they've believed in them more strongly longer into the modern age, whereas you don't have that as much in the Western. In the Western, there's a lot more skepticism, and
Right.
whether that's enough to fight back against the energy of some of these things or not, it, it's an interesting thought to examine.
I want to put something out there because you brought up a really good point here, and I want to put this out there. Um, the book American Gods that both of us
Mm.
have read, it talks of needing that energy for those certain gods in order for them to exist, right? I think the same is to be said about
About
certain
curses.
things. Yes.
Mm.
But that being said, we are a very young country in the grand scheme of history. We're a very young country, probably one of the youngest, with the exception of countries that were formed, after the Berlin Wall fell and things of that nature, and Yugoslavia is breaking apart and things like that. But I mean, in terms of original countries, Yugoslavia still had the same people there, right? But when
Mm.
America was formed, it was a new group of people coming over onto some land that was a lot different than their own. Curses, Native Americans, things like that. We often talk of burial mounds, and sometimes I don't think those should be excavated because I think there's things there you don't let out, but that's neither here nor there. But I think when you're dealing with something that's older than you, and older than you in a sense that they have probably seen things that we will never be able to understand, different time, different locations, different worships, because we don't know the gods that existed at that point, at that
Mm.
time, what they revered. I mean, obviously, we know in terms of like the names and whatever pictures they paint, but we didn't live in that exact time. A lot of the Zoroastrians moved down from Persia when they were being persecuted and stayed in India. So there's a whole nother religious group. You got the Hindus, um, you have Sikhs, and then you have, others of that form and fashion. So they have old beliefs, much like Jews, much like Muslims, things of that nature. They have old beliefs. As to where America, like Spider said, we have skeptics. That's really our belief system here in the United States. People like to say, oh, it's Christianity, but really it's skepticism. We don't really have a religious
I don't believe you.
fundamental
I'm
country.
skeptical.
I know. I wouldn't want you to. I'm skeptical that you don't believe me. I'm skeptical
Yeah.
about that. I think you really do.
All right,
How
I'm
you like
done.
that? All right, yeah, that's right. But I think that because there's a cat right there that's looking me dead in my eyes as I'm trying to talk. You gotta love the black cats. I got one as well. He's probably sleeping. But I think because it's an older country, and then you try to remove something that has religious value, it has that same energy from that same time of those same devout believers, and it sits. And I think what happened is when they cut the diamond and broke it up into pieces, I honestly think that, yeah, the curse probably vanished because it wasn't what it was before. They had basically destroyed it because obviously it was an eye. It went into went into whatever statue they had. And then once they cut it, that was it. That was all she wrote. You basically destroyed ancient property. And I'm a big proponent of, as long as the country is stable, send it back. Like, that'd be like somebody breaking into our houses or breaking into Spider's house and stealing his whiskey and then putting it in a museum in Britain. He'd be pissed. He'd be like, give me my whiskey back. It's mine. I paid for it. You know what I mean? Same basic concept for me. I mean, I get it. In war-torn countries, it's tough because you're like, I want to save it. But at some point when the country restabilizes itself, I do believe that it should be brought back to that country. Because I think if you take something from somewhere, I think it's cursed. Especially when it says it's if you take this, you're going to be cursed. So that's what I think. Gentlemen, what do you have for me of your cursed objects list?
Well, me first or Spider?
You guys can fist fight for it in the parking lot of a Denny's.
Okay. Well, since you're going to do a doll already, I figured I would do a village. So I found one called Sugisawa Village in Japan, and it is essentially, long story short, the Japanese version of the Blair Witch Project. It is their version, essentially. And I found out it was actually the inspiration behind Fatal Frame 2.
Oh.
And the story goes that in order to find this village, and to be completely upfront and honest about everything, it is still to this day, they still to this day debate whether or not this village actually exists or not. It's like a Japanese urban legend. Some people say it exists, some people say it doesn't, and other people say it exists in a space between time and space, kind of like how you think about the ghost trains.
Yes.
It's kind of like that. And some people think that it exists between time and space, and it can choose when it wants to appear to people and when it doesn't. So the story goes that you need to find a red torii gate with a rock underneath it shaped like a skull.
Deadpool.
Or
Steven. I get your Twitter, your Twitch, and your...
Yeah.
Tell people what a torii gate is because they might not know what a torii gate is.
And a torii gate is this big, large gate like you see in a lot of the classic Japanese architecture and structures. And it's the big, giant red gate. And I don't really know what it means. Can you tell us what it means?
Yeah, good luck. I haven't... My Japanese is rusty. It's for
spirits.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual gateway for them.
I knew it had
something
to do with spirits, but I wasn't sure the specifics.
It's a so
like
it runs like this, and then there's two pillars that run down, and it's basic for spirits. They have them in all throughout Japan.
Yeah, they're kind of fresh for me because I've been reading some controversy about one of them.
Yeah, I was trying not to bring that up.
Well, we're not going to get too deep, but this is just a side point that there is one that stands in Nagasaki that's half of a gate because it was half destroyed when the bomb was dropped. So it's a very symbolic, very, the torii gates are a lot over there, but they're not just like in Europe, you have castles all over the place that were abandoned and things like that. You can basically trip over a castle and people are like, oh, there's a castle and whatever, not a big deal.
I slipped and fell into a castle.
You have all of these torii gates, but they're very important and they're very meaningful.
Yeah.
And you don't just walk around tripping on them because you're not going to stay in their country for long.
You don't
they will remove you instantaneously.
And you don't put a genocidal maniac on top of them either. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's not the controversy, this isn't going to get us kicked off the channel because it's not that bad. But the controversy recently was that there was a statue promoting the upcoming Assassin's Creed game in Japan, and it had to have a torii gate, but it also had fire and explosions behind them on the statue, which people took in Japan as symbolic of the torii gate from Nagasaki being destroyed by the
Right.
bomb.
Yeah.
So they were very upset about that, and the statue's been pulled, and they're going to change it around and probably take out that imagery. But it just goes to show how seriously they take these
Yes.
things.
How
Even
important they are.
a country as modern as Japan, who's into robotics, who's into technology, all these things, and they're like 100%, this is our spiritual heritage.
Yeah.
Don't you mess with it.
Yeah, Japan's a very strange country when it comes to that. They're very much high tech, futuristic. Some of the greatest inventions have come from Japan.
And they
But they're
still respect
also
their ancestors.
they're very much also they're 1 foot in the future and 1 foot in the past,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is in a way to their strengths, but also to their weaknesses.
Yeah.
In some aspects, it's very detrimental for them in the way their class structure is set and the way that property ownership is set for people that don't live in Japan, that have to move to Japan. It's a very rigid society, and you have to you operate within it accordingly, or you get treated a certain way. Or if you're American, you get kicked out. There's no, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think if you go to another country, I think you have to respect their laws and their rules. You're not from there. You don't live there. If somebody's coming over here to my country, I want them to respect my laws and my rules. You know, if I go to another country, same thing. Like if I go to Iran, I'm going to respect the rules and laws of that country because I am a guest.
Yeah.
You don't go into somebody's house and try to do dumb stuff unless you're stupid. You go into somebody's house, you know?
There's some prank streamers who are in jail in Japan right now who learned that the hard way.
Good.
If you go around and do your YouTube pranks and just mess with people, they
Yeah.
will arrest you and they will keep you
Good.
there for a very long time.
I saw somebody do a Russian prank by hiding in a mailbox, and
Oh,
somebody put
no.
their letter in and they threw the letter back out, and the person didn't hesitate to pull it was a revolver of some sort, open the door of the mailbox and just let a couple of them go. You know, and that was in their own country. Those were probably their own people.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think all those prank videos are stupid.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to prank your friends, which I think is hilarious. Don't prank random strangers. Don't do
You'll
that.
get in trouble.
Yeah, because you're going to get in trouble or you're going to have a one-way
Oh,
ticket.
that's what
to
I
the
meant
afterlife.
by get in trouble.
Not everybody can get away with Borat type stuff. So
Yes.
just don't do it.
Yeah.
That's a nice. This is my
And I'm not
motto.
a big fan of that kind of stuff either myself. I understand and I know people are entertained, but I think the whole like not telling people that to be in on the joke,
Yeah.
it can get you into a lot of trouble.
Yep.
Or not existing.
And
anyways,
so-
continues.
okay. Wait,
yeah,
who?
continue,
What?
buddy.
Okay.
This guy, the guy under
Okay.
us. Sorry, I'm confusing. It's late.
Okay.
I should be in bed.
So
I'm kidding. I love
to
you
wrap
guys.
up this village, basically the urban legend, the story goes that if you're able to find this village, you can stay there, but if you do, you may or may not be able to leave the village ever again. And they say that the village is cursed or haunted because supposedly a crazy person, let's not sugarcoat it, went there and did bad things to a lot of people that lived there at the time. And they say that it was such a graphically violent event that it stained the village.
Now, is this so? What? Let me get this straight. So this is the village that appears almost like out of nowhere, and it's a cursed village that you can live in, right?
Yes.
Is there ways to access this village, or is it just by happenstance?
They say that there are ways to access the village,
Okay.
and they say that if you're getting closer to it, like there's no one really knows where it is, but they say if you're getting closer to it, there are signs, and as you're driving, some people say you have to be driving in a car to actually access the village, and they say that oftentimes, although they have admitted that it could just be meteorological coincidences, but they often say that it'll start to rain or get foggy or there will be unfavorable weather conditions for about 2 or 3 miles before you get there.
Okay. Because I was watching a bunch of videos today, and they were talking about rituals, and some of them are deep.
Yeah.
You got to have like a lit match at 11:59 and
Oh,
has to burn for
don't
56
even get
seconds.
me started on the 4chan boards in Japan and the rituals to go to hell. Don't even get me
Like-
started on that.
My whole thing is, why would you want to go there in the first place? Like the elevator game, that's one.
Oh yeah.
You
No, they
know,
got
like
this stuff in Japan where you gotta like go to this train station and that train station and
no.
do this and that, and if you don't, you'll be cursed.
Listen, I get tired just getting to the fridge sometimes. So all that jumping and
Yeah.
moving around, that's gonna be about it for your boy. Spider, before we get out of here, what do you have?
Well, let's talk about the Screaming Skull.
Oh, this is a good one.
Ooh.
I just watched something about this earlier today.
I haven't heard of this one.
Because if you don't have one of these, you ain't living life. You ain't
The
live
Screaming
laughing and
Skull, the
Perfect
legend of
Halloween
this was
decoration.
reinterpreted several times into movies back in
Yeah.
the day. There's at least one black and white movie,
Vincent Price. Vincent Price. I think it's Vincent Price. Yeah.
which was also on Mystery Science Theater for anybody who's interested in the laugh.
Oh, it's hilarious too. It's great. It's great.
But it's based off of earlier legends. I don't think it's like an exact like this is an interpretation of the actual story. I think they just took the idea of the Screaming Skull and they put it into the movie. But Burton Agnes Hall is a manor house in the village of Burton Agnes in the East Riding of Yorkshire, England, built by Sir Henry Griffith between 1601 and 1610. The legend is that his youngest daughter, Anne, is bricked up in the Great Hall. Now, it's tough to find out exactly why. It said that she was bullied, which led to her death. But why they felt the need to put her in the wall, I don't know. Haven't been able to find that out, which is weird because I would have thought something that's popular would be easy to find. But
Hide the evidence.
Yeah.
supposedly, people have attempted over the years to take the skull off of the property. And if you do that, then supposedly her spirit arrives in the house, like just abruptly appears and starts shouting and screaming and throwing things like poltergeist kind of stuff, and things just generally become very unpleasant very quickly. What's interesting is that it's not the only Screaming Skull legend out there. There's also one of a former slave who was buried, and his skull is said to scream if you remove him from his resting spot. And that's something that that I believe came over. Most of these Screaming Skull stories originate in England, so I think it's some like localized to that part of the world. But it's kind of fascinating if you want to kind of see it dramatized. Like I said, there's a really good Vincent Price movie that you can watch with or without the people laughing at it. It's worth a watch either way. It's got all the campy bylines to it and everything, and it's a fun story, very fun story.
He said funny. Like there's
I was gonna
comedy.
say funny, but
Next up, Will Ferrell in The Screaming Skull with Mark Wahlberg.
that
So
would suck.
That would
be a
comedy.
terrible movie. I would see it though. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'd watch it.
Yeah.
It would
I'd
be so
watch it.
stupid. It would be funny.
It would be hilarious. I'm not gonna lie to you. Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock are also in it.
It would be.
Already
Two men
did
and
it.
the
Already did it. Already did
I know,
it.
but I was saying
did
that would be the
relate.
title of the movie.
I would go to see that movie if it was about the
Yep.
three of us. That'd be a
Yes.
blockbuster right there. Before we get out of here, because it's about that time, we should continue this conversation next week because I really think that we
All right.
could go on because I didn't
Yeah.
even talk about Robert the Doll, and I think that's something that needs to be discussed
And I
I
because
found
watched
a
a
website,
documentary on
too.
that actually very
there's
recently, just like a
there's
few
people
days
that
ago.
write letters to him
Oh,
like, hey,
yeah.
I'm sorry that
I'm sorry
did
I
this.
offended you, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
I'm sorry I
Yeah,
took
I've
your
heard about
picture
Broke the
and
rules.
and I think you should. I think because you're in Tennessee, that you should drive down to get an Uber down to the Bell Witch's Cave and take a rock, and then bring it home, and then see
Nah.
what happens. I need you to
Nah.
document this. Listen, it's for the show, man. You're a good guy. We like you, but you're the intern, and this is what
They're
has to
trying to get
happen.
I'll
me
say good
hurt.
things about you when you go
We'll
missing.
say good things. We'll be like,
Yeah,
he is
in
not on
my
the show tonight.
eulogy.
Well, he's not on the show tonight because he got shocked, he got electrocuted by lightning strike. We love him though.
You do that, I'll go fight the Wendigo, and pretty soon Rob will be the only person left on the show.
Oh, we're getting back to that again. We're
because it's been a while.
Yep.
But
it's a vintage classic.
Here's the twist: I am the Wendigo. I'm just a more handsome one. I'm the new age Wendigo, baby.
Wait, who was the final boss fight again? Who is going to be the final boss fight?
In what? In
your Uncanny video game.
Oh, I have to remember that because we had somebody.
Yeah, I want to say it might have been Les O'Dell.
Yeah, it was Les O'Dell and
some other people
and Wesley
Instant
Carpenter.
Impossible difficult.
We're the two. Yeah, they were the final bosses. Yep. Yeah. Because it was all people that we knew in our inner circle that we had put in different stages. So like Seth Breedlove was in, like we were going to put him in it. He was going to be like the 4th level boss, and like his crew. It was going to be fire. It was supposed to be like Streets of Rage. It was fire. Like we really sat down and were writing. Like we were talking
it all
about
out.
it. Yeah, it would have been dope. We needed a developer to do that. Now, obviously, we would need the permission of everybody to do it. I wouldn't just be a dick like that. Be like, yeah, we're going to put your likeness in here and be pricks. No, we're not like that. But I think we need to continue this conversation into next week because I feel like we didn't get to points that we could have. If this would have been the 2-hour show, we could have done that. Which 2 hours is 2 hours, and maybe in the future we'll bring back that 2-hour episode because we have a third person now, so that might be a valid plan. But we're gonna stick with the 1 hour now because I like it. But so I think next week we'll do that. Gentlemen, give me some final thoughts. We'll start with Spider. What are your final thoughts here?
Well, one thing to remember is if you ever interact with something that supposedly is cursed, give it the benefit of the doubt, but don't let it run your life. Because
Agreed.
The moment that you let it like take over to the point where you don't think there's anything you can do about it, then you've bought into it and you either get rid of the thing or you just live with it and be miserable, because that's what happens with people. I mean, I take steps to deal with stuff that happened around here and I feel fine. So was there a curse? Who knows, but it's not bothering me. So I think that you could probably hold cursed objects all day and night and it wouldn't bother you in the slightest. And it's like, I'll just drink whiskey about it. And the spirits would be like, I'll share.
And like, we're like you're much like me. You don't do much. We don't go nowhere. So what are they going to do? They're going to curse us in our house. Oh no, I'm stuck in my house. Oh no. But I get it. Steven, your final thoughts.
All right. So I think curses are probably, I think they're real, but I think they're a lot more mentally based than people give them credit for. But with that in mind, they are also a universal thing, and cultures all around the world believe in them. So take that as you will.
There it is. Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed another amazing episode of This Uncanny Earth. I want to thank my co-host, Spider, and his cat, because they were instrumental in this. Next time I'm going to bring my black cat.
His name is Oscar.
We can have a black cat fight off. Oscar versus Hobo.
Does he serve tacos?
Sign it up. He might.
Oscar's tacos is
hairy tacos.
He sounds like a grouch. He goes meow.
Oh, he's like you then. Meow. He's like you. He's just the cat version of you. I like it. I love to see it. Gentlemen, what do you have coming up? I didn't ask that at the beginning. What do you got coming up? Spider, I know you're on your 67th marathon of Final Fantasy 2.
This game just has taken forever. Like, I'll tell you that. Like,
listen, there's a reason why it wasn't
Final Fantasy.
There was a reason why they didn't port it over to the United States when it was initially released, and that's why 2 was 4 and 4 was 2.
Yeah. Well, I'm continuing with that playthrough, of course. I'm finishing it tonight. I'm out the last leg of it. I'm just going to finish up. I'm not going to start 3 until tomorrow, but that'll be the next game in the series. So I'm finishing that up. I don't have anything else upcoming. I did do another episode of the audio only podcast. Let's talk about this for the first time since May.
I'm going to have to go check that out.
Yeah, I gotta check
I
it out
thought it
too.
got canceled.
He keeps throwing shots, and it's probably one of my favorite things that he does. He's petty. Like I don't think you realize. Like I used to be petty, but I'm not. Like now I'm just like whatever it is, what it is. Like I'll do what I do. But this dude, he's petty. Like Tom Petty.
That dude.
Like life in the fast lane, petty. You know what I mean?
I don't forget things. I don't forget.
No, he
things.
does not.
Mistreatment is something that I will not be
But let me
forgetting.
say that mistreatment to that other person is well earned. He shouldn't have been a jerk. I'm sorry. I'm not going because I was involved in that situation as well. So you cross him, you cross me. That's how loyalty works. So you're lucky I don't get on my P and Qs and start dissing you because it'd be over. If I ain't gonna do that, I'll let my man do that.
Well, this is mostly the name. The name is obviously a dig, but the content is family friendly stuff because my daughter listens to this one. And this episode was what have I been doing since May? Basically, it's about what I did over the summer. It talks about SummerSlam. It talks about the Irish Festival. It talks about the Taco Festival. It talks about all these things that we did that I'm so burned out already, all like squished together. I'm going to try to do regular episodes of that again if I can get back into it. It does one thing about Spreaker, if we ever get back to using it, it does not export to YouTube anymore. It does not connect to YouTube, which is kind of problematic.
So you have to download the episode and then re-upload the episode to YouTube.
Yes, it's kind of tedious. I found that out right after doing it, thinking everything was going to be yay, new episode, and then it was a bit of a thing. So, but yeah, I'll be doing more episodes of that. So keep an eye on not only this page. Make sure you're subscribing to This Uncanny Earth. Don't make me tell you again. Don't do that, Hogan.
I'll wag my finger at you if you do not subscribe. And
subscribe
comment.
to that.
Like, subscribe, and comment.
Likes and views. Views are very important because that helps towards monetization. It takes an amount of time of people watching. The likes get past the algorithm. There's so many little pieces in the gears you got to do. Do that for this channel.
Yes.
Do that for my channel. Spider Does Things. So you can listen to the podcast and you can watch my gaming videos and watch me fail spectacularly.
Listen, I saw you actually did a clip. It did a little short of your little Final Fantasy.
I've made a couple of those when it's been funny.
See, I told you, you were like, for the longest time, like, I don't want to do that. I'm the baby.
They get a lot of views. I hate it, but they get a lot of views.
I told you. I've been telling you.
I know, but I hate it still.
Our Thomas Jefferson thing got like 800
plus.
800 views plus. And we were stupid. We didn't even know Thomas Jefferson was an actual president.
That's why it got so many views.
Like we were borderline goofs. We didn't know. We live in the United States. We didn't know Thomas Jefferson was a president.
They loved it.
Like, damn.
Our education.
Listen, and it's all me because I'm, not to be a dick, but I'm kind of the leader of the show in a way.
Our stupidity is your fault,
and I'm the one who does the research. And you
got to teach us better.
So yeah, I'm done. Y'all the leaders now. This is too much responsibility. Sorry.
Anyway, there's all that. So do that for both this channel and for the other one, and also to Deadpool's channel. And he has what's upcoming for your show for this channel.
What's going on with this weekend?
All right, this week we're gonna finally finish out the rest of Journey to the West and finish up that series with our Chinese culture, and then after that we're going to move over to an idea that Rob himself gave me, and we're going to do 3 or 4 episodes on strange YouTube channels, starting with this one I found called Channel 31215343112. And it's all these weird random stuff, and it's got weird visuals and weird audio, and it just randomly popped up in my recommended YouTube feed like 6 months ago out of nowhere. And I'm like, where did this come from? And at first I was like, oh, it's just a strange little binaural audio thing. Okay, that's kind of cool. And I didn't really think much else of it. And then a few days ago, I just started seeing these random YouTube videos talking about this channel all over again. And they're saying it's like a numbers channel or a channel for spies, maybe. Or some people even suggested that it might have something to do with MK Ultra being revived.
The numbers.
Yep.
That comes out next week.
Nice.
So I'll be playing it.
Numbers.
For those of you who don't know what a number station is, a number station is just a station that repeats certain numbers.
Like the Fallout 3
And-
creepypasta.
And those numbers are for spies in the field.
Yeah.
What field? Nobody knows what that is. But they're for spies in the field.
We had one on the old
I
version
remember
of the
that.
show. We
I
took it,
remember
we
that.
reversed it. It was just a little intermission that we would just play randomly
Nice.
throughout.
We need to get back into that. I think we'll
would be
talk.
fun.
We'll talk about that off stream. I don't want people stealing our ideas because that was not an idea. All right, y'all. We're up out of here tonight. Thank you to Spider. Thank you to Deadpool. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you fine folks next week for another wonderful episode. 304. You're not going to want to miss it. Cursed Objects Part 2. See you then. Take care. We're out of here for the night.